If organizations borrow their spirit from people, because absent the people, the organization does not have spirit. So if organizations borrow their spirit from the people inside them, organizations borrow their spirit from the people inside them. Well, they borrow their spirit from people inside them and outside of them. That is part of it as well. It's not just so absent the people inside the organization. There is not spirit. There's potential for spirit to unveil itself, reveal itself, come into. It's not even come through, and into being the world. But organizations do not have spirits. The people inside them and those outside of them, and I'll elaborate on that. But it's the people that have the spirit. And where do leaders play in sustaining, in inspiring spirit, in sustaining spirit, in recalibrating the form that increases the possibility of spirit, that even if that's can be, even if when I say spirit or spirit is heard, it's hard to, entire books have been written, libraries have been written on what is spirit. So with that, but without going down that rabbit hole, we know when it's lost in a company. We know when the consumers lost the spirit for the brand. It's as if the story that's being told to the world, right? The perception, the brand is the perception the people have of insert product, service, the belief consumers have in X product or service X to solve for Y, which is Y is insert their individual, emotional, social, psychical, spirit, right? Spiritual needs, wants, desires. So that's the perception. Perception is a hollow shell absent spirit, absent what actually occurs, the quality of the service, product, relative to what their expectations are. So if we're thinking about organizations, borrow their spirit from the people inside of them, the people that participate in their organization, inside and outside, employees, customers, shareholders, stakeholders, and specifically, I'll laser in on one at a time, but the employees. What role does, if we're going to talk about employees and how they relate to one another and work together for a cause and live up to the expectations implied by their role and the responsibilities that come with their role, then leadership is a discussion point. Leadership is a fulcrum of organizations having spirit, as a consequence of spirit being the result of how the people within the organizations relate to the organizations themselves, one another, based on how spirit, it becomes a circular, it's like how spirit is in the organization already, or how it can come back if it's lost, because it can come back if it's lost, and the people have the spirit comes through the people and how they relate to one another. That said, the organization and how it's structured influences, incentivizes or disincentivizes spirit from manifesting itself. And now that word, I've said it 50 freaking times, can become opens the pathway for a deeply philosophical, mystical, whatever conversation. But for simplicity's sake, we know when it doesn't feel right. We know when it doesn't feel right. So, and we know when it feels not perfect, but we know when it's there. It just is, and it can be gone in a flash and come back in a flash. But if the goal is to have sustainable spirit over long periods of time for a more meaningful, productive, purposeful, present, for the necessary sacrifices of the people to be worth it subjectively. That's what we've been talking about. And leadership plays a role in that, like the purpose of the leaders. Example, focusing on happiness. Happiness is an example. May very well be a symptom of other focuses where happiness is the result. In a more hedonistic philosophy, happiness is the prerogative right in front of oneself, and then potentially undermines happiness in the long term. In another sense, happiness is the outcome of focus on other things that, in another way to look at the pursuit of happiness is actually a byproduct of having a goal, sacrificing things one wants today for other things of importance one values even higher tomorrow. There's so much data to reflect that pursuit of happiness, the actual pursuit of it, is where the meaning lies. It's a very interesting paradox that the happiness lies in the negation of it and the pursuit towards it. It's the negation or the sacrifice towards the goal that leads to the meaning, which helps burdening that process, that ultimately it's okay, I did it and I'm happy, yay, and then boom, down goes the roller coaster before a new goal is, or aim is of that flash of creativity, like, oh, this is what I'm going to do next. Now go back up the roller coaster, and then boom, down again. But it's and then the ride of life is, in any great roller coaster, if anyone's ever been on a roller coaster and enjoys the highs and lows, it's not just the going up and that anticipation and the thrill of going down. It's the winds and how the ride has been architected to almost keep the rider on their feet, even if they know what's going to happen. There's such changes in the change in how the body is moving as a result of it not just being linear, or like up and down, but all the bobs and weaves and side by sides and in between. It's almost like interrupting the mind and the body connection by increasing speed and adding turns and having a larger delta between the height, the going up and the dip, and that's some of the elements that make an adventurous and exhilarating roller coaster ride that funnels or filters and leverages the anxiety of life into something awesome, exciting, a thrill to be a part of. Even though we know what's going to happen at the end, it's still enjoyable to do it while we're doing it. That's a metaphor for the pursuit of happiness, for the meaningful outcomes that can occur, that do occur in work when we're laboring a part of an organization that's organized in a way by and through leaders that show up in ways that change us in who we are, in ways that inspire us to aspire to become and be and pursue and do more and challenge ourselves and burn ourselves in our own flame in a Nietzschean sense. It's like, but what role does leadership play in the spirit of organization? If the spirit of organization comes from the people, what role does leadership play? Heraclitus comes to mind. Heraclitus, he was like the philosopher's philosopher. Heraclitus. I aspire to read and study and learn more of Heraclitus. Some great resources on Heraclitus. Not just Martin Heidegger. I have a book in the other room on that I haven't read yet on Heraclitus. And then Dr. McGilchrist, who's been on the Culture Matters podcast, amazing, unbelievable opportunity to learn. He talks about how he was deeply impacted by Heraclitus in his adolescence, in his teens, I believe. And he's recently produced this magnum opus, this 2-volume, The Matter with Things book. And I think of Heraclitus, when I think of Heraclitus, I think of McGilchrist, one of these modern day thought leaders on Western and culture in general. Heraclitus was a philosopher's philosopher. As far as I remember, he could have become a king, but he said he abdicated that to him it wasn't an opportunity, it was an albatross, or I think a negation of his potential, or contradicted the philosophies that he embodied throughout his life. But over 2,500 years ago or something, he was living and breathing and thinking and philosophizing. The man never steps into the same river twice. He's not the same man. It's not the same river, something to that effect. So there's a book called Fragments. I read it years and years ago, aphorisms by Heraclitus. I believe Friedrich Nietzsche was influenced greatly by Heraclitus. Many thought leaders in the world since have been influenced by Heraclitus. And there's a quote attributed to Heraclitus that comes to mind around leadership that's always taken me. And it's, of every 100 men, 10 shouldn't be there. I guess it's in the terms of a battle, or in its context of a gathering of people. For every 100 men, 10 shouldn't be there. 80 are nothing but targets. 9 of them are real fighters. And we are lucky to have them, for they make the battle. but one. One is a warrior, and he will bring the others back. 10 shouldn't be there. 80 are nothing but targets. 9 of them are real fighters, and we're lucky to have them, for they make the battle. But one is a warrior, and he will bring the others back. When I think of the 100, I think of many hundreds and thousands of years later, Pareto's the polymath, the Italian polymath, coming to this hypothesis about the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, that 80-20 heuristic that you hear on the internet or hear on social media, read on the internet. Countless books have been written about it in both academic milieus and self-help, and you hear this 80-20 rule. 80% of the outcomes is 20% of the constituents or the distribution. It's the 20 leads to massive exponential outcomes. Or I think of Price's Law that I heard from Dr. Peterson. This Price's Law, the square root of the amount of people does the majority of the output. Then you go back to Heraclitus, thousands of years before that. Of 100 men, 10 shouldn't be here. 80 are nothing but targets. 9 of them are real fighters. One is a warrior. He will bring the others back. Okay, here's one way to interpret this in the context of organization. The spirit comes through the people inside and outside, how they relate to one another. Outside, attention, perception. Inside, how they relate to one another, work together for a common goal. How they behave and how they relate to one another has to do with, those that shouldn't be here. This opens up a whole, why shouldn't they be here? As an institution becomes corrupt, that distribution's going to, it can become flipped, where the warriors, the real fighters, they're corrupt, and those that shouldn't be here are the ones. It's like Jedi versus the Sith. So let's look at it backwards. Let's say the institution is corrupt and truth can't move from the bottom to the top. Truth. Who's defining truth? In the context of a business, it's the customer. The customer, right? Drucker, the purpose of a business, it's interesting, we're using these assumptions. The purpose of a business is to create and keep a customer. Well, why? Well, because the business exists. It has its value. It means something in the world relative to customers, because customers are providing the capital. They're exchanging their capital to get something they believe is valuable. That capital, it lays the foundation for the employees to receive capital that are customers in other contexts, to pursue their aims, goals, aims and goals through their desires. Because everyone's a customer of the society. Every employee in the company is a customer of the society. They're a shareholder in the society. They're a customer within the society. They're simultaneously employee. They're benefiting from customers, the marketplace, valuing their products and the company's products and services, exchanging their capital for what they perceive as valuable. That capital then is used to provide them with job, which has pay that they can, as customers of other companies that are organizing within society, as shareholders of society, that in theory they have the possibility to pay, to live up to the cost of their living, to have the basic essential needs while pursuing their subjective aims, goals, and desires that are ultimately influenced by that very society. And this is like a flow. So it's a flow of energy that's going on. Everyone is connected. All things are connected, and everything is relating to to everything else. So the quote, those the 10 that shouldn't be here, the company becomes. The question is, who decides who shouldn't be here? And there's a scenario where the company, let's say it's operating in a, what could be argued as a healthy, constructive fashion. It is pruning those that shouldn't be there. Now, how they prune them is another conversation that we can explore even more deeply in the future, because it will be an inevitability, according to Heraclitus, okay, and Price and Pareto, inevitability that there will be those within the organization that will be pruned. It will be an inevitability that there will be those within the organization that will be pruned. Now, why that is also another conversation. Okay, that's another philosophical diatribe we can go on. But let's assume for the conversation here, which is that spirit comes from the people within the organization, that, and the people without, but the people within the organization, not just the organization. Now, the organization influences the possibility of spirit, because we've talked about how the spirit is the in between. It's the in between. Let's say two parties. There's one person, another person relating to one another. The spirit is in between that, and that makes me think of Martin Buber, and then in a Kierkegaardian sense, if I'm even saying that correctly, there's also I should digress on that. There's spirit, the individual relating to themselves, or whatever, relating to themselves, the world, that whole psychological, philosophical conversation. But in context of an organization, the spirit is the in-between, whether that's in between me and you, just us two, or that's in between myself relating to myself. But it's in the in-between. So, back to the quote, every 100 men, 10 shouldn't be here. 80 are just nothing but targets, 9 are real fighters. We're lucky to have them, for they make the battle all but one. One is a warrior, he will bring the others back. They will bring the others back. The individual, the leader, which in a sense could be any individual at any time, glass half full, simultaneously all 100 people have the possibility or capacity to lead. Right? We could break that down to have a goal and sacrifice what they want now for what they want most, that is closest congruence to the overall collective aim. Let's just say that. But the role that leaders play in the spirit being unlocked in an organization is to bring the others back. Maybe I should have just said that 20 minutes ago. To bring the others back, to signal what to pay attention to, what to look at, what to value. The leader is watched in what they say, what they do, and their deeds. Right now I'm thinking about Zoroaster. Good words, good thoughts, good deeds. Words, thoughts, deeds. The alignment, the congruence, or the how those three things that are constantly fragmented or fracture relative to how the roller coaster moves left, right, up, down. You don't know where it's going. They're going to be out of whack, but the leader signals what the group should value based on what's best for the group. And best for the group is broad. It can be broken down into many things. One, stay alive. Somewhere between staying alive and thriving, there's all this many, there's 100 opinions. 99 opinions outside of the one opinion. But the leader brings everyone back. So each of us have to, within our own domain, within an organization, our role and our responsibilities, think about how we bring the others back. How we bring the others back. And in a simple sense, are we doing our job? And if we are, how well are we doing it? If we believe we're doing it really well, could we do it better? And if we could, we believe it better. But we're not, here's where the organization influences that. If we don't trust the organization, we won't do our job. Or, okay, there you go. We won't do it. And if we don't do it, it's a negative feedback loop. It becomes a positive feedback loop for self-destructive behavior or destructive behavior against the organization. That's where a percentage, those that shouldn't be here, I think that grows how the organization perceives its people. That grows from 10%, let's just use 10% out of 100, the 10 that shouldn't be here. As the organization relates to its people, it'd be like, everyone stinks, all our people need to go. That's a signal that the organization's become corrupt because it hired them, it kept them, it trained them or it didn't, and if it didn't train them, then it trained them on not training. And so that's a heuristic for organizations to look like, what percentage of our people shouldn't be here? Oh, none of them. Well, that's interesting. That organization probably didn't ask that question because they stopped listening a long time ago. But also, are we pruning those that we believe shouldn't be there? And that leads to the whole thing of how, because if we don't know how to prune them, and we don't want to prune them because we rationalize because we don't know how to prune them, then we won't prune them, and then they'll grow, and then they'll undermine the organization when ultimately they may have wanted to help the organization one time, or they may have wanted to help, but they couldn't help. That's where they're bought in, but they don't know enough. Like the character, they could have the personal qualities, they could have the skills, but maybe they don't have the talent, or they have the talent, but they have the personal qualities, they don't have the skills, or they have the skills and the talent, but they don't have the personal qualities. That reminds me of like Buffett, right? And Munger, and how they said we hire for intelligence, energy, and integrity. You can't have integrity and intelligence without ethic, because that's not good. That the person won't get anything done. You can't have energy and character, integrity and energy without intelligence, because that person will make a lot of mistakes. You can't have intelligence and energy without integrity, because they'll destroy you. That was Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger's heuristic of how they looked at it. I was reading The Prince this morning before this. I was reading The Prince by Machiavelli, which I haven't read in many years, and I was reading the Berkshire Hathaway book by Adam J. Mead. It's like absolutely unbelievable, so that's probably why it's on my mind. And I was reading Derek Parfit's Reasons and Persons, which I freaking love that book. And I'm now that I'm thinking about it out loud, all three of those texts have influenced this conversation with myself and you. Really, well, you, whoever you are, you've helped me think. That's what this does for me. Explore, right? Those three books influenced me today. Those leaders, those people that sacrificed something they likely wanted then for what they wanted most, influenced how I could think through these other topics that I've mentioned some other influences today that I have learned from in other times, and my lived experience in both working with companies as a business consultant, an advisor to founders and chief executive officers, a facilitator of family business transitions, a architect of company culture, an author of 30 Days of Thought, host of the Culture Runners podcast, and general person, student of life, trying to be a better teacher person. Through all of these leaders, people that sacrifice something that they likely wanted now, that's the definition for what they wanted most, to provide something to the group, provide something to the world. Thinking through their experiences of life, through my lived experience, made me and making me who I am. And I would say the role that the leader plays in the organization is a a mirror of responsibility in a Girardian mimicry, mimetic desire. We're going to copycat a mirror of the ability to respond to the world, and a medium of accountability with words and deeds. So the person in an authoritative state above their subordinate has the deed. They have the ability to cut off, to prune. They also demonstrate their capacity, capability, and character, and how they show up to work, to labor, to the organization. Because monkey see, monkey do. The subordinate will model their behavior, even if they don't know they're modeling it. A lot of learning happens from observation and experience. Part of the value of this social media stuff is that it creates a distance for the observer within their psychological safety to perceive that they're in control of how they're influenced by ideas, and it's a way to take in. Actually, now that I think about it, it's a fragmented form of how human beings learn from leaders. Because learning from leaders happens by experiencing with them life. You see the congruence between their words, their thoughts, and their deeds. But with social media, you're only experiencing my words. And you're experiencing my thoughts based on how exploratory I am in the conversation. If this whole thing was scripted and I was just reading, which I'm not, and I knew everything I was going to say when I came into it, you would be only seeing my words. My thoughts are scripted. So that's another level of fragmentation and falseness. And you're now worshiping something because worship, you're holding the information at the highest. If you're still listening to this whole long conversation, then you're worshiping something that is false, because you're only seeing words, not thoughts and deeds, because it's a script. It's just a script. Now, maybe that creates value for you in the time, but be careful, because it hasn't necessarily, I don't know, be careful. That's a separate conversation. Words and thoughts, I'm exploring with you. So, okay, maybe that's another level of truth, but we're not doing this together, so it's not fully, you don't have the words, thoughts, and deeds. Now, if I'm using this analogy, in work, the person in authority that's seen as the leader, it's their words and their thoughts and their deeds that's experienced by their teams and their people, which teaches the people how to act, how to live, how to be. And if it comes the culture piece, culture, the operating system is representing that linguistically, in symbolism, through ritual, and in story. And organizations that are buzzing are doing this, whether they realize it or not. And organizations that aren't doing this are unlikely to be buzzing. But then this is a thing that happens at the outcome. It's like happiness is the outcome of the pursuit of it, that meaningful development. When it's attempted to be architected, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work, and it doesn't necessarily mean the right people are at play. And I've learned that from attempting to architect cultures, and there's a lot of ways to do it wrong. So, however, when the architecture is there and the engagement and action is there too, when the thoughts, the concepts, and are explored, and the words are shared proactively and transparently and collaboratively, and the deeds are there, the actual modeling is occurring, explosive change can happen very quickly. And I think some of the if you study a company that's growing rapidly, it's that elements of what we're talking about will exist, and there's exceptions to every rule. I think there's exceptions to every rule. This was supposed to be about leaders. I mean, it is. What role does the leader play in if organizations borrow their spirit from the people, what role does leadership play in the sustaining of that spirit? And we talked about the Heraclitus, 10 that shouldn't be here, and how when the organization, there's a relationship between organization, let's say, becoming corrupt, that 10 grows to 20, 30, 40, 50, how they're perceived by the organization. We talked about that. We didn't really talk about the targets, but we did. I didn't say it, but the whole idea of modeling deeds, watching actions, targets watch, and they they're nothing but targets. Target as in, their labor will reflect the alignment of thoughts, words, and deeds of the real fighters and the warrior who will bring them all back. And at any given time, the organization wants to elevate and recategorize the 80 targets. It's paying attention. When the organization's listening to its customers, those that shouldn't be or they're pruned by the targets because they're bought in. It sounds negative. I mean, it could be negative. I'm not even going to say. But every one of these categories has value. And I'm going to unpack the value that every one of these has. But because they all have value and provide value to the organization, they all provide information, feedback, labor of varying value return in temporally, like on a short, medium, and long-term basis. However that's measured is going to be subjective to the organization's aims, goals, desires, and so on. But the leader plays the role of re-engagement, of exercising, of modeling, of inspiring, like they activate spirit, of recalibration, integration from modeling. Integration is a consequence of the modeling, and how the modeling takes place is contextually relevant to that organization and that place and that time, based on where it's going, where it's come from, or where it's come from, where it's going. The leader plays a huge role in activating that spirit, and essentially everyone. It's like a both and. Everyone is leading within a context, has the capacity to lead more, and the more individuals lead, the higher likelihood the signals that, like the signs, will represent leader by authority. Authority is different than influence. Leading by influence is different than leading by authority. If someone's leading by influence, they don't have authority. They could end up being pruned, even if they're right. The organization's corrupt. If they're leading by authority and not influence, maybe they're the corrupted that they go against. If they have authority and influence, well, yeah, what are they doing? They're in a position held highest, and they're almost like they're in a position of master, and they're acting as servant. Is that the way to influence in a position of authority? Or, and then if they're in a position of servant and they're acting like a master, well, says who? Maybe the organization isn't hearing what it needs, or they haven't. That's where we have to look at what they're doing and how congruent it is with the organization. Some people outgrow organizations, organizations outgrow people. The leader, based on how much the leader's paying attention and what their character, their capacity, their skill, they're a part of figuring out who's to be pruned, where are the targets, why are they targets, can they be more? If they can't, is that fine? If not, why not? Or how can they move into, where are real fighters? Because like everyone can bring each other back, and in a culture that's buzzing, the people hold each other accountable with their words, through their thoughts, their alignment with the organization. And it's the confidence, and comes from the competence of their deeds. Like they're making things happen. If organizations borrow their spirit from the people, what role do leaders play in sustaining the spirit over time? The leaders, through modeling the core values that within that time and space best represent how the organization relates to its customers, reinvigorate all people and increase the likelihood for value to be created at every given time. And it's a never-ending process for as long as the organization's existence, because change is a part of life, and organizations respond to change through the people responding to change. And how they respond to change is influenced by what those they consider in positions highest do and don't do, and how they do it. And all of what I'm saying is it's philosophical. All of what I'm saying is philosophical and psychological, as abstract, but each company has the content that bring to life the context. And a big part of my work is learning the content so the context becomes clear. Learning the content so the context becomes clear, and then a lot that occurs within an organization and becomes predictable when enough frameworks are intermeshed with the content and the context. So the value of all the things we're talking about, you will have to synthesize and take in your own life, figure out how to make it meaningful.